time. I'm young of knowing where the America is going. Like I just heard a guy talk about losing America's workers and the agriculture field and building homes. And I'm like, no, some of that stuff you ain't paying attention to because the housing market is plenty of homes. There are plenty of homes, family units and single units. Actually, the housing market has slowed down a great deal. There's plenty of inventory. There's inventory that's been sitting longer than ever. Will it go? I believe so. That's what their houses for. But then you have to weigh in on the economy, finances. Then you want to look at insurance. Come on, fam. I think the insurance game will run you out of the things have changed. I'm like, yeah, there's plenty of inventory. What is he talking about? But yes, there's a lot of shifting. Well, be that as it may, America is what it is, fam. You can't depend on the government, especially as a man, to do for you and your dependents what God has given you the ability to do. Like I say, I always hear a lot of people talking about, well, everybody not capable of doing this and that. You gotta learn. You pick up books, learn this. People learning all over the door, all everywhere. And they constantly learn to keep up with the times instead of setting themselves apart and working their niche and going hard and staying dedicated to it. It ain't easy, but it's law. You understand God's law, planting and harvesting, supply and demand. You cheat card. It is really. I'm telling you the truth. I've always been on the outside looking in and still able to produce and provide. For real. I'm not just talking. Come take a walk with me and you'll see. You'll see. There's a foundation. It works. Actually, that's the way to go. Hmm. Back to the video. This is never gonna get better. I fucking hate being an adult, and definitely my life, I struggled with this. I love being an adult. This is the most money that I've ever made.
This isn't me trying to fear monger. This is just me trying to prepare you. The U.S. economy right now is like a Jenga tower with 18 fucking pieces missing. We are one piece pulled out away from everything just toppling down. AI was responsible for 40% of U.S. GDP growth this past year and 80% of U.S. stock growth. And the manufacturing industry has contracted for 7 consecutive years, while every other economic indicator is saying this is as bad as things have been since 2009. Now, when you have a sentence that says the economy is as bad as it's been since 2009, you are fucked. So again, this is not me fear-mongering. This is just me preparing you. Our economy is in a very bad place. If you have a job, hold on to it with everything you have.
America is falling behind when an authoritarian regime attacks academia, science, news reporters, free speech, students. The best and the brightest leave. The same thing happened in Germany, in Russia, in Greece, and it's happening here. And this hurts the country because all of the talent is going elsewhere to help another country.
Bankruptcies are skyrocketing right now.
I just talked about it. Real estate.
Bankrupt, more restaurants. Farm bankruptcies are up 35% higher than 2024. Hi, today is your update in the economy. It's October 12th, 2025. We are day 12 of the government shutdown. Our economy is collapsing every single day. Look at this.
Yeah.
Airports are a disaster. Last time we had government shutdown in 2018, we lost $3 billion every week. And now
Because of the tourist areas. The tourist areas are, they dry. They drying up. I'm not going to spend my money over there and they charging these tariffs like they're cutting America the fuck off. And that's affecting your tourist areas. Look it up. I'm just watching it. Like I say, I stay watching the market, the real estate market. And it's not all good. A lot of people losing their homes too.
And all that stuff in Washington are closed. Washington has an unemployment rate of 6% before the government shutdown. Expect a catastrophic crisis in Washington. We have lost over 1 million jobs this year. Inflation is 2.9%. Groceries are up 29%. We are in a recession in 22 states. We are in a recession in construction. We are in a recession in manufacturing. The stock market tanked on Friday, dropped 900 points. Drop a comment below if you want to stay on the algorithm to get your update on the economy and the stock market on Monday, October 13th.
I want to make a video
That's not good.
Finance, but needs to be directed to as many eyeballs as possible because this is eventually going to affect everyone, including yourself. And this is not a doom and gloom.
This is intentional, but you got to prepare.
What is coming? What?
Yeah, it's intentional. I ain't no about
I made videos on all this
mishap.
stuff before, but they've been great. So I want to make a video that is much higher
That's
level
intentional.
overview to give everyone an understanding
So you better prepare
for
yourself.
them.
Now you better look it up.
On August 11th, the United States national debt surpassed 37 trillion. Now you might ask, well, October 2025, or September, I guess you could say, September, is when the national debt was fiscal year 2025. And we ended at a debt of 37.6%, which means in a month and a half, we added another $600 billion to the national debt. The United States economy, when you look underneath the surface, it isn't doing too hot. Again, I'm not going to go into the weeds, but when you look into the data, it's really not actually doing that hot. And with that,
It's cooked.
we have 10 companies, 10 tech companies that are keeping the economy, quote unquote, afloat. Problem with this is it's very much looking very bubblish, very 2001, very 1929-esque. Now, the problem with this is the United States government has way too much debt. We are at something called a debt to GDP ratio of 125%. I think it's a little more now, like 125.4%. The reality of the situation is if the United States economy takes a turn downward because these companies aren't able to produce the results that they're essentially being invested into at the valuations that they have, or essentially you could put it in terms of like they're looking as shiny as they can be. And if they're not as shiny as they actually are later down the road, then everything in the market could essentially pop. Now, the problem with this is the United States economy or the United States government has been a backstop. The United States government does not have the financial capability to backstop this bubble popping. And the genuine concern is that if this bubble pops, the United States government will not be able to fund it will not be able to bear Social Security, the largest expenses to the government will have to start dwindling. Now, if this gets even more severe, how does this start to affect the socio-political sphere? And what if the money itself for things like subsidies of energy, like oil, or subsidies for things like food, what if that starts getting affected and farmers can't produce the food that we need and oil companies can't produce the energy that we need, and we have essentially a sell-off and the inability to fuel the people that we have? What happens then? And genuinely, I would typically say, hey, the United States will be able to get through this. Humans have ingenuity, and we have the ability to see the problems, be able to work around the problems, create solutions to the problems. But the only caveat to this is when you have a problem, it tends to be something that's a little more concrete. But what we're talking about now is not a concrete problem. What we're talking about is a system failure, a point where the actual government, the entire thing that we know of collectively as what we all bank on as being secure, pops and it goes away. And that's the genuine concern. And so the spiral looks like this. The hype gets real in artificial intelligence that it's going to be able to boost productivity and help us grow out of the national debt. Then the productivity, the AI bubble pops instead of it being a real boom. And then that spirals over to the government not having the capital or the money to be able to fund the debt. And then the debt spirals, and then the debt causes the United States government to go insolvent. And then the entire populace turns into a socio-political, violent collapse. This definitely isn't a conversation you want to have over a dinner table. But again, more people need to be aware of this situation because it is a process that is playing out right in front of our eyes. So let's talk about it now before the situation actually is around the corner.
I don't think people realize how quickly Trump is tanking the economy. When Trump took office, he inherited the strongest economy for an incoming president since George W. Bush. Job growth was booming, wages were up, inflation was down, and the stock market was climbing. Fast forward to today, and Trump's tariffs and his economic agenda have thrown everything in reverse. The new jobs report is brutal. The economy added just 22,000 jobs in August, about 50,000 jobs short of expectations. But the revisions for June and July were even worse. For the first time in 4 years, since the last time Trump was president, the economy actually lost jobs. And it's hitting some of our most important industries the hardest. Over the last 3 months, we've lost 31,000 manufacturing jobs, 13,000 mining jobs, and about 10,000 construction jobs. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is raiding factories and stripping legal status from 1 million immigrants, which in their absurd theory was supposed to help the most vulnerable American workers. But Black unemployment is now at 7.5%, the highest in 4 years. And youth unemployment for 16 to 24-year-olds is at 10.5%. And it's not just jobs. In July, we also saw one of the biggest monthly spikes in inflation, which is now at its fastest pace in 5 months. And families are with back-to-school supplies up 7.3% this year. And to put the cherry on top, after Trump inherited 12 straight quarters of economic growth, our economy actually shrank in the first quarter of this year and has remained slow as consumers brace for even higher prices. A lot of Americans held their noses and voted for Trump, thinking that he'd fix the economy. But like everything else with him, his thirst for power and control has led to utter chaos. And unless we call it out now, he'll continue to lie and drive our economy off the cliff. So share this video and follow me to stay in the loop.
Welcome back to the channel. There are many things that blacks have said and have told white Americans, but they were not ready to listen to what blacks were telling them. And this is a classical case of F around and find out, because when blacks came out with solutions on how they can help Americans and how they can sort out the American political and economic issues, whites were not ready to listen. They went ahead, voted for Trump. Now here is Donald Trump with the longest government shutdown and with many people, millions, more than 42 million people being affected by the cuts on SNAP funding. And this is a serious issue. Regrets among many white Americans who once supported or dismissed concerns about Donald Trump's presidency has deepened in the years following his election. Before 2024, many Black Americans warned that Trump's rise represented not just a political shift, but a resurgence of racial resentment and authoritarian populism. Those warnings were often ignored or minimized as overly alarmist or identity politics. In hindsight, many white voters, particularly moderate and suburban conservatives, come to recognize that Black communities had a more experienced understanding of the racial undertones and historical echoes in Trump's rhetoric. Having lived through generations of policies and movements that cloaked into racial inequality in political language, Black Americans
ain't worried about none of that. You did. We already know how to deal with it. We've been doing it all our lives. Peace.